The fall before the rise, hook and setup. In a distant future, where galaxies were stitched together by fragile alliances and ancient grudges, the universe faced a quiet crisis. A small act of betrayal was about to shake the foundation of an interstellar peace. In a lonely, dark corner of the galaxy, a notorious criminal group made a choice that no one could have foreseen. They kidnapped the daughter of humanity's strongest warrior, a move that would change everything. Captain Raylan, known throughout the stars as a hero of countless battles, had earned his reputation through courage, skill, and an unyielding sense of justice. His daughter, Lyra, was the light of his life. Even as a child, she showed signs of her father's bravery and kindness. Now a young woman, Lyra had grown into a symbol of hope and promise. To many, she was a beacon of what the future could be, and to her enemies, she was a target. It was on a cold, silent night aboard the space station Eden 7 that the unthinkable happened. Raylan had just returned from a long patrol mission, his mind weighed down by the burdens of war and the constant need to protect his people. He was greeted with the usual calm that came from the station's routine, a silence that soon turned ominous. Rumors of unrest and distant explosions had reached the station in the past few days, but none hinted at what was about to unfold. In a hidden room on Eden 7, masked figures planned their next move. Their leader, a shadowy character known only as Varric, studied a holographic map that showed the network of secret routes used by smugglers and pirates. With cold determination, Varric chose his next mark, Lyra. In his eyes, kidnapping the daughter of humanity's greatest warrior was not just a daring act. It was a message that even the mighty could fall. At exactly midnight, as the station lay in its deep slumber, the criminals made their move. With swift and silent precision, they bypassed the station's weak points and reached Lyra's quarters. Lyra was alone, her room lit by the soft glow of distant stars seen through a narrow viewport. In a moment of terror and confusion, she was taken from the only home she had ever known. The criminals left no trace but a single cryptic symbol etched into the wall, a mark that would haunt the minds of many for years to come. When Captain Raylan awoke the next morning, the world seemed to have changed. The station was filled with whispers and uneasy glances. Raylan's eyes, usually so steady and calm, betrayed a deep shock as he discovered that his daughter was gone. In that instant, the hero felt the weight of failure and loss. The kidnapping was not just a personal blow. It was a challenge thrown at the heart of humanity. It was a signal that no one, not even the strongest, was immune from the cruelty of fate. The captain's resolve hardened like steel. Despite his grief, Raylan knew that he must act quickly. He summoned his most trusted allies and planned his next moves with precision. Every decision he made was a step toward retrieving Lyra and sending a clear message to those who dared to disturb the peace of the galaxy. The path ahead was fraught with danger, and the stakes were higher than ever. As the news of the kidnapping spread throughout the space station, it ignited a spark of rebellion among the people. Many, inspired by Raylan's past deeds, were ready to fight back against the unseen enemy. In the crowded corridors of Eden 7, whispers of hope and anger mixed. Soldiers prepared for battle, and civilians braced themselves for the possibility of war. The station, once a haven of calm, was now on the edge of a storm. In the dim light of his command room, Captain Raylan stared at a hologram of the galaxy. He saw not just stars and planets, but a map of hidden paths and secret meeting points. Every light on that map represented a life, a dream, a future waiting to be protected. It was in this moment that he vowed not to let despair take root. His determination grew stronger with each passing minute. He knew that to save Lyra, he would have to face enemies more cunning and ruthless than ever before. Varric and his team believed that their plan would destabilize the balance of power in the galaxy. They had hoped that by kidnapping Lyra, they would force a confrontation, one that would leave the great warrior broken and the people divided. But they had not counted on the spirit of a father and the unity of those who believed in justice. Raylan's heart burned with the need to restore hope and to prove that even in the darkest times, light could prevail. Thus began a race against time, a pursuit across the stars, through dangerous territories and enemy lines. The fall of a beloved figure marked the start of an uprising that would shake the galaxy. As Raylan set out on his quest, the entire universe held its breath. The story of Lyra's abduction was not merely a tale of loss, but the spark that would ignite a journey toward redemption and a new beginning. In the silence of the vast space, the call for justice echoed. The stage was set, and every star, every planet, was a witness to what was to come. The fall before the rise had begun, and with it, the fate of the galaxy was forever changed. The call to arms. Captain Raylan did not waste any time. The shock of losing his daughter had stirred something deep inside him, a mix of anger, sorrow, and a burning need for justice. He gathered his closest officers and trusted friends in the command center of Eden 7. The room was filled with soft lights and the hum of electronic maps. Every face told a story of determination. They all knew that the kidnapping of Lyra was more than a personal loss. It was an attack on hope, on the unity of the galaxy. Raylan stood before his team. His eyes, filled with both grief and resolve, scanned the room. "We must act now," he said in a steady voice. "Our enemy has taken something precious, and we will not let fear rule our lives." His words, simple but full of meaning, struck a chord with everyone present. In that moment, every officer and soldier felt the heavy weight of duty. They were ready to fight, ready to follow their captain into the unknown. In the control room, maps of star systems and secret routes glowed on large screens. Raylan and his advisors studied these maps carefully. They knew that the kidnappers would not be found easily. Varric, the shadowy leader of the criminals, was known for his cunning and hidden bases. His network stretched through many dangerous parts of the galaxy. The path ahead was not clear, but Raylan was determined to find Lyra. One of Raylan's best officers, Lieutenant Mira, stepped forward. She was a skilled pilot and a quick thinker. "Captain, I have been tracking unusual signals coming from the outer rim," she said. "They might be connected to our kidnappers." Her voice was calm, but there was urgency in her tone. Raylan nodded, giving his approval to follow the lead. The team quickly prepared a small fleet of fast, agile ships. They set their course for the outer rim, following Mira's signal on the radar. Meanwhile, far from Eden 7, the kidnappers were busy in their secret hideout. The base was hidden on a small, icy planet where few would ever go. Inside a dim control room, Varric looked at a holographic image of Lyra. She was held in a secure room, watched over by armed guards. Varric's face was hidden in the shadow, but his eyes burned with cold calculation. For him, Lyra was a symbol, a prize that would show the world that even the strongest warrior could be defeated. He planned every detail with care, believing that the distress of humanity would force Captain Raylan into a trap. Back on Eden 7, Raylan's fleet moved quickly through the dark space. The stars outside the viewports shone like tiny beacons of hope. Each ship carried brave souls, ready to fight for justice and for the life of a young woman who had become a symbol of light in troubled times. In the ship's conference room, Captain Raylan, Lieutenant Mira, and their team discussed their plan. They would split into groups. One group would search for clues on nearby planets, while another would stay on high alert in space to watch for any enemy movements. The journey to the outer rim was long and filled with tension. Every star system they passed, every asteroid field they navigated, felt like a step closer to danger. Raylan's thoughts were with Lyra, and his heart pounded with every moment. He remembered the day he first held her in his arms, the promise he made to always protect her. Now that promise drove him onward through the dark void of space. During their search, Lieutenant Mira and her team landed on a small barren moon near the outer rim. The surface was rough and empty, but hidden in its shadows might be a clue. They moved cautiously, checking every building and scanning for any signs of life. Mira found a small data terminal in an abandoned facility. After a few minutes, she managed to download files that contained details of unusual communications. The files mentioned a location on a frozen planet, an area known for its hidden rebel bases and dangerous criminals. Mira immediately relayed the information back to Captain Rallin. His eyes lit up with hope as he saw a possible path to follow. "This could be our way to find Lyra," he told his team. He knew that every clue was important, and that even a small piece of information might lead them to Varick's base. The captain then ordered a change in course. Their fleet turned towards the icy planet, their engines humming with determination. Back on the icy planet, Varick's guards grew uneasy. Rumors had started to spread among them that a search party was closing in. Varick, aware of the risk, tightened security around Lyra's cell. He hoped that by keeping her hidden, he would force Captain Rallin into a mistake. But deep inside, even Varick knew that hope was a powerful enemy. The more he tried to crush it, the stronger it grew among those who believed in justice. As the fleet drew nearer to the icy world, Captain Rallin could feel the tension building. His crew was focused, and every member was aware of the risks. The search had now become a race against time, a race to rescue Lyra before the kidnappers could use her as a pawn in their cruel game. In that vast, cold space, every moment was a struggle between light and dark. The call to arms had been answered by many, and the sound of determination echoed through every corridor of Eden 7 and every engine of Rallin's fleet. The captain knew that the coming days would test them all. Yet, with each step, hope grew stronger. Even in the midst of fear, the human spirit shone bright, and the search for Lyra became a symbol of the power of unity and courage. Thus, with their course set and hearts full of resolve, Captain Rallin and his team moved toward the icy planet, ready to face the dangers ahead. The battle for hope had begun, and nothing would stand in their way. The frozen labyrinth. The fleet approached the icy planet with heavy hearts and determined minds. Captain Rallin watched as the frozen world came into view through the large windows of the command bridge. The planet's surface was a maze of ice and snow, a place where secrets could hide in the cold and the dark. Lieutenant Mira stood by Rallin's side. "Captain, our sensors show strange signals coming from deep inside the ice fields," she said. Her voice was steady even as her eyes searched the screens for more clues. The data she had found on the small barren moon pointed them here. The message had mentioned a hidden rebel base. Now that same signal pulsed from the frozen ground. Rallin nodded slowly. "This is our best lead. Prepare a landing party," he ordered. "We must move quickly." He knew every minute counted. The thought of Lyra, alone in a dark cell somewhere, weighed on him like a heavy chain. The landing party, made up of skilled soldiers and trusted officers, gathered near one of the small dropships. Mira led the group. The dropship touched down on a flat area near the ice fields. The cold was harsh and biting. A thin layer of frost covered everything. As the group stepped out, they could see footprints in the soft snow. They were not alone. The footprints led the team into a narrow passage between huge ice formations. The wind howled softly, and every step made the sound of crunching ice. Mira checked her device, which glowed with the signal's path. "We must follow these tracks," she said. "They lead to a hidden place under the ice." The party moved carefully through the frozen labyrinth. The walls of ice looked like giant sculptures. Shadows played on their surfaces as the sun began to set behind distant mountains. Every sound was loud, and every breath was visible in the cold air. The soldiers kept close, their eyes alert for any sign of danger. After a short time, the group reached a narrow crevasse. The signal was strongest here. Lieutenant Mira bent down and examined a small metal panel half buried in the snow. "This is part of a hidden door," she whispered. "It looks like it leads underground." Her fingers brushed away the frost, revealing strange symbols carved into the metal. The symbols matched the one found in Lyra's room on Eden 7. Captain Rallin stepped forward, his face set with determination. "We must get inside," he said. "This may be where they keep our daughter." He gestured for his team to prepare. With careful hands and steady hearts, they removed the metal panel. A narrow door was revealed, half hidden by ice and snow. The door creaked as it slowly opened to reveal a dark tunnel leading under the planet's surface. The team lit their torches and stepped inside. The cold air was replaced by a musty, damp smell. The narrow corridor twisted and turned, the walls lined with old pipes and cables. Every sound echoed in the darkness. The only guide was the soft glow of Mira's device, which pointed further into the tunnel. As they moved deeper, the corridor opened into a larger cavern. Here, they saw signs of recent activity. There were fresh footprints on the wet ground and makeshift beds in a corner. The room was simple, with a few crates and tables. At the far end of the cavern, a heavy metal door stood closed. Mira's device showed a strong signal coming from behind that door. Captain Relin approached slowly, his hand resting on the hilt of his sidearm. "Stay alert," he told his team in a low voice. Every step was measured and cautious. The silence was deep, broken only by the drip of water from the ceiling. He reached the metal door and paused. The door had scratches and marks, as if someone had tried to force it open. Relin took a deep breath and pushed the door open. Behind it, the room was dimly lit by a flickering light. In the center of the room, a young woman was tied to a chair. Her face was bruised, and her eyes were filled with fear, but they also shone with hope when she saw Relin. "Lyra!" Relin cried, his voice echoing in the small room. His heart pounded as he rushed forward. The guards, who had been hidden in the shadows, started to stir at the noise. In that moment, time seemed to slow. Lyra's eyes met her father's, and a silent promise passed between them. Before Relin could free her, a voice came from the darkness. "So you have finally arrived," said a man stepping forward. He was tall and had a cold smile on his face. "I am Darren, one of Varric's lieutenants. Your journey ends here, Captain." Relin stood tall, his eyes never leaving Darren's. "You will never harm my daughter," he said firmly. His words carried the strength of a man who had faced many battles. Around them, the tension grew as the guards moved to block Relin's team. The cavern became a battlefield in an instant. In the dim light, the fight began. Relin fought with all his strength, driven by the need to save Lyra. His team moved in harmony, using simple plans and clear signals. Every move was filled with purpose. Mira covered the rear, her eyes alert for any more surprises. The clash was swift and hard. Metal clashed, and shouts filled the room. Relin managed to break free the bonds that held Lyra. "Run," he called to her as he engaged with Darren. His heart ached at the sight of his daughter suffering, and his anger made him strong. As the struggle continued, the cavern trembled with the sounds of conflict. The fight was not yet over, and the outcome was uncertain. But in that frozen underground labyrinth, hope was reborn. Lyra's rescue had shown that even in the coldest and darkest places, the light of a brave heart could shine through. The battle in the cavern marked a turning point. It was a race against time, where every second brought them closer to either freedom or defeat. The frozen labyrinth was full of shadows and dangers, but Relin and his team would not rest until Lyra was safe. The enemy's counterstrike, the echo of clashing metal and desperate shouts, still filled the cavern when the battle reached a pause. Captain Relin stood close to Lyra, his heart pounding and his eyes searching the dark for any sign of danger. Though the immediate fight had slowed, the threat was far from over. In the shadows behind them, Darren and his remaining guards retreated, planning their next move. The rescue of Lyra had upset Varric's plans, and now the enemy was ready to strike back. Relin quickly gathered his team. "We cannot waste any time," he said in a firm, low voice. "Our enemies are regrouping, and they will try to trap us." His words were simple, but every word was filled with determination. Lyra, still weak from her ordeal, managed a small nod of agreement. Lieutenant Mira, who had fought bravely alongside them, checked her device and noted that more enemy signals were coming from the tunnel entrance. Outside the cavern, A cold wind howled, carrying with it a sense of impending danger. Raylan led his team back through the narrow passage, moving carefully in the dark. Their footsteps echoed on the icy floor as they hurried to regroup in a safe area. The team needed to plan their next move, knowing that Varric's men would not let them escape easily. As they reached a larger corridor that connected several rooms, Mira stopped suddenly. "Captain, listen," she whispered. A series of soft, measured footsteps approached from behind a thick wall of ice. Raylan's hand went to his sidearm. His eyes darted around, and he motioned for everyone to hide behind the crates and equipment scattered along the corridor. Moments later, a group of enemy soldiers entered the passage. They moved slowly and cautiously, as if they were searching for hidden foes. The enemy's leader, a stern man with cold eyes, spoke into a small communicator. "Spread out and search every corner. Captain Raylan must be near." His voice was calm, but filled with menace. The enemy's plan was clear. They wanted to trap Raylan and his team, leaving no escape route. Raylan listened carefully as Mira's device beeped softly with a warning. "There are more of them coming," she said quietly. "They are coordinating with someone outside." Raylan's heart sank. Varric was setting a trap to recapture Lyra and end the rescue. In the hidden corner of the corridor, Raylan whispered to his team, "We must split into two groups. One group will create a diversion near the entrance, and the other will lead Lyra out through the old service tunnel. We cannot let them take her again." His plan was risky, but it was the only choice in this tense moment. Lieutenant Mira volunteered to lead the diversion. "I will draw them away and slow them down," she said. Raylan placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "Be careful, Mira. We need you safe. I will go with the other team to get Lyra to the exit." The team trusted their captain, and though their hearts were heavy with worry, they knew that every second counted. Mira and her small team stepped into the open, moving toward the corridor entrance. As expected, the enemy soldiers spotted them. Shouts filled the corridor as the enemy rushed forward. Mira quickly ignited a small flare, and its bright light cast long, eerie shadows on the icy walls. The sudden brightness confused the enemy for a moment, giving Mira's team a chance to fight back. They fired their weapons, and the corridor became a chaotic battleground. Each shot and explosion echoed like a warning in the cold silence of the icy passage. Meanwhile, Captain Raylan led the other team, carrying Lyra between them. They moved quickly through a narrow, winding tunnel that had once served as a service route for the station. The tunnel was dimly lit by old flickering lights, and every step they took was filled with tension. Raylan's mind raced with worry for his daughter. He remembered the promise he made to himself and to Lyra. He would not fail her. As they hurried through the service tunnel, a sudden sound stopped them in their tracks. It was a low hum, a signal coming from hidden speakers along the tunnel walls. Raylan signaled everyone to stop. The hum grew louder, and from the shadows emerged more enemy soldiers. They were not the same group from the corridor. These soldiers were dressed in darker uniforms and carried advanced weapons. It was clear. Varric had sent his best men to intercept the rescue team. Raylan quickly assessed the situation. "We are surrounded," he said, his voice calm but laced with urgency. Lyra clutched his arm, fear in her eyes. The enemy moved slowly into view, their faces hidden in the dim light. Raylan knew that they could not fight all of them. The only chance was to use the narrowness of the tunnel and a hidden escape route that Mira had mentioned earlier. He spoke quickly to his second-in-command. "Take Lyra and move to the eastern side of the tunnel. I will hold them off for as long as I can. We have a secret door here that leads out. Once you reach it, send a signal to Mira for extraction." His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed the worry of a father and a leader facing impossible odds. With a nod, the team carrying Lyra moved carefully toward the eastern wall. Raylan turned to face the enemy. His team formed a protective line behind him as he readied his weapon. The enemy leader from before stepped forward, a sly smile on his face. "You cannot escape, Captain," he said softly, his words echoing through the tunnel. The tension built as Raylan fought off the enemy soldiers. Each move was measured and deliberate, using the narrow space to his advantage. The fight was fierce, and every moment felt like an eternity. Raylan's focus was on keeping his team safe and ensuring that Lyra reached the secret door. His determination shone through as he repelled wave after wave of attackers. The sound of distant explosions from the corridor reminded them that Mira's diversion was still in progress. Raylan hoped that her efforts would buy them enough time. His heart pounded with the fear of loss, but his resolve was unbreakable. The enemy's counterstrike had turned the rescue into a race against time and overwhelming odds. In the dark tunnel, as the enemy closed in, a small signal flashed on the team's portable communicator. It was Mira. "The extraction ship is waiting at the hidden bay," her voice came through, steady and clear. With renewed hope, Raylan signaled to his team. The race for survival had taken a dangerous turn, and every moment now was a test of courage and loyalty. As the enemy's forces pressed on, Raylan and his team pushed forward into the unknown depths of the service tunnel. Their footsteps echoed in the confined space as they raced towards freedom. The enemy's trap had become a fierce battle, but hope still burned in every heart. The captain's promise to protect his daughter and his crew was stronger than any fear. The enemy's counterstrike was only the beginning of a long struggle, and the fight for justice would continue until every last soldier had been defeated. Descent into darkness. The narrow service tunnel became even darker as Captain Raylan and his team moved cautiously toward the hidden door. The recent battle still rang in their ears, and the threat of enemy soldiers loomed over every step. With Lyra safely held by a small group of trusted officers, Raylan led the rest of his team deeper into the winding passages. The air was heavy with fear and determination as they prepared to face what lay ahead. The corridor was cold and damp. Faint light from old, flickering bulbs provided little comfort, and the sound of dripping water echoed along the walls. Each step was slow and measured as the team followed a worn path known only to a few. Raylan's mind raced with thoughts of the previous fight and the price of each moment lost. He could feel the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, a duty to protect Lyra and every brave soul who had joined him in the rescue. As they advanced, the tunnel split into several paths. Raylan held up a hand, signaling for silence. He consulted a small holographic map stored on his wrist device, which showed several possible routes. The device pulsed with a soft blue light, indicating that one route had a stronger signal than the others. "This way," he whispered, pointing to a narrow passage that curved sharply to the left. The team followed him, each person alert to any sign of danger. The passage soon opened into a larger chamber. Here, the tunnel walls were lined with old, rusty pipes and a network of cables that carried long-forgotten power. In the center of the room stood a heavy steel door, clearly not meant for ordinary use. Raylan paused before the door, his eyes scanning the room for hidden traps. The door bore marks of forced entry and was secured with a complex locking mechanism. It was clear that this was no ordinary storage room. It was a command center. Lieutenant Mira stepped forward. "Captain, I will try to open it," she said, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. She took a small tool kit from her pack and examined the lock. The mechanism was old but still advanced, a relic of a time when these tunnels served as a secret control hub for Varric's forces. Mira's skilled hands worked quickly, her eyes focused on every small movement. The lock clicked, then whirred as the door slowly swung open. Inside, the room was dimly lit by a bank of screens and blinking control panels. Dust floated in the air, disturbed by the sudden movement. This command center held a map of the entire icy planet, with various markers and routes indicated in bright colors. There were records of enemy movements and secret rendezvous points. In the far corner of the room, a large holoprojector displayed a live feed of one of the corridors, likely the same one where the enemy had recently regrouped. Raylan stepped inside and approached the central console. His eyes studied the information on the screens. "This is where Varric directs his forces," he said quietly. The room was a gold mine of data that could help them understand the enemy's plan. If they could decode the information here, it might reveal the location of other enemy outposts and even the final hiding place of Lyra's captors. Before the team could absorb every detail, a loud clatter came from behind them. Raylan spun around, hand reaching for his weapon. Out of the shadows stepped a tall figure dressed in a dark uniform, a cold smile on his face. "I see you have found my little secret," the man said. His voice was smooth but carried a clear threat. "I am Kellen, Varric's chief strategist. You must be Captain Raylan. I have been expecting you." The tension in the room spiked. Raylan's eyes narrowed as he kept his weapon ready. "You have made a grave mistake, Kellen," he replied. "Let my daughter go and surrender this command center." Kellen laughed softly, shaking his head. "Your courage is admirable, but foolish. Varric has planned every move. You are trapped in a web of your own making." With a swift motion, Kellen pressed a button on the console, and the screens flashed to life. New data streams and maps filled the room, showing enemy fleets and hidden bases scattered across the icy planet. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Raylan stepped closer to Kellen. "Tell me where Lyra is, and we might let you live," he said in a firm, measured tone. But Kellen only smiled wider. "That decision is not mine to make," he said. "Your daughter is a symbol, a bargaining chip in a war that is far bigger than you can imagine." Before Raylan could respond, the sound of rapid footsteps filled the corridor outside the chamber. Reinforcements were coming. Kellen's eyes darted to the door as if he had been waiting for this moment. "It appears your time here is up," he said, his voice tinged with mock sympathy. "But know this, the war has only just begun." In a flash, the door burst open, and enemy soldiers swarmed into the room. Raylan's team immediately took cover, and a fierce firefight erupted. Amid the chaos, Raylan ordered his men to secure the command center. The valuable data on the screens could turn the tide of the battle if it reached the right hands. Lieutenant Mira hurried to copy the files onto a portable drive, while others provided cover fire. Kellen managed to slip away in the confusion, leaving Raylan staring after him with grim determination. The enemy assault was relentless, and every moment brought them closer to a full-scale battle within these ancient walls. Raylan knew that they had to hold the command center long enough for Mira to secure the data and for an extraction team to arrive. As the room filled with the sounds of combat, Captain Raylan's focus sharpened. This command center was not only a stronghold for Varric's forces, but also a key to unraveling his enemy's next move. With each enemy soldier that fell, hope grew stronger among his team. The descent into darkness had revealed a hidden secret, a clue that might lead them closer to saving Lyra and bringing down the mastermind behind the kidnapping. In that dim, dusty chamber, with the battle raging around him, Captain Raylan vowed that he would fight with every breath until his daughter was safe and Varric's plans were shattered. The descent into darkness was only the beginning of a new phase in the war, a war fought not just with weapons, but with the unwavering will to protect hope and restore peace to the galaxy.